Hello, everyone. Welcome to Good Intentions and Bad Outcomes, a podcast about challenges and practices that you might encounter in the workplace, where good intentions have unintended and often unnoticed consequences. I'm Gino.
And I'm Wayne.
Oh, Wayne. Every time we share a situation that we or one of our listeners have seen in the workplace that is challenging in some way. We discuss the what and the why, and we try to come up with alternatives on the spot. So let's get started. So the topic for today is how do we actually show support as a leader? And we, both Wayne and I, before we started talking about this podcast or kind of landing on a topic, we were sharing a couple of stories of situations where we've seen that leaders really genuinely want to support their teams in doing well and want to be engaged in the process. And they kind of show up at planning meetings, they show up at demos, they show up at stand-ups, they walk by the team space. Oftentimes they kind of want to inject themselves into a retrospective as well. But let's not talk about that last piece. Let's talk about, because that's kind of a totally separate podcast altogether, but let's talk about the showing of support, which, Wayne, I mean, we would both agree, I agree at least, is something that comes from a good place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a leader in an area and you've got a group of people doing work for you, you want to support them, right? You want to make sure that they know that you're interested in what they're doing and that you're interested in the outcomes they're producing and that you're worried about how they're feeling about the work, the quality of the product, all of those things. You want to be inclusive, you want to play a role in what's happening there, and you want to really help out the people because you know that they're going to do better work if you can support them. That's really part of your job.
Yeah,
So
and I, in having talked to leaders through the situation as well, I have heard genuine interest in seeing how the team is improving. Like really where it gives them energy, and so like, yeah, I
mhm.
love seeing how the team got from where they were like a couple of months ago, and what I see now is day and night a difference. So I really enjoy seeing that evolution in my team and seeing that the investment in the way that we work actually pays off. So it really does come from a good place, and I can't really point out um, situations in which this really had a bad intent in the first place, right? Where people really wanted to kind of play the big brother to figure out if something would go wrong so that they can punish them. That was never my understanding of situations where this happened. So I
Yeah,
mean, if
yeah,
anything, I think this is the clearest good intention we have seen in any of the topics that we've talked about in our
yes,
podcast. But even this incredibly good intention has significant impacts that we might not all recognize, especially those leaders not, because they come from a place where they really mean well, and it's really hard then to see how this can be misinterpreted, how this can have a negative impact.
right.
And then, so let's talk about this first before we discuss kind of what the emotions are that are happening in leaders' minds afterwards when they realize that.
Sure. Yeah. What do you think is going on?
Well, I mean, what is happening and what I've seen happen is that while the team otherwise is fairly open, suddenly they stop talking.
Yeah,
They simply defer to the authority in the room. When any questions are being asked,
yeah,
when discussions are being had, and there is kind of a friction moment, and it doesn't have to be a lot. It may just be, hey, is this better or is that better? And people just shut up, right? They completely close down, and the reason why that is they say like,
yeah,
well, we have the authority here. Why would we need to make this decision, right? So that's
right,
one, and that's
right.
not even coming from a
Yeah,
bad place either. And yeah, it's understandable.
yeah, yeah. I think what you're describing there is in any situation, there's always a power differential between people, right? So
Mm,
And whether that is real or just perceived, there's still often a power differential. So a manager comes into the office, or there's a scrum master who, or a team lead, somebody who is seen as being responsible. They're the ones that have the authority, like you mentioned, they're an authority figure,
Hmm.
and the rest of the people will naturally defer to that person. So as long as that person is present for whatever reason, be it good, bad, or otherwise, the people in the room will defer their comments or actions. They'll adjust their comments and actions so that they can cooperate and collaborate with that person who they see as the leader. And
Hmm.
that's often, I think, it gets accelerated to a point where they'll even relinquish their own personal opinion or suppress their
Hmm.
opinion in order to please whoever's in the leadership position. So, like you say, you'll
Yeah.
get people who just will refrain from commenting, or perhaps adjust what they're going to say to please the person who they think is in power.
Right. And
So it's a power differential thing, and
it,
yeah,
yeah, so it's even more than that, right? So because you're describing a situation right now when even when the leader is staying quiet, even when the leader is only there to observe and genuinely is interested in seeing how their team improves and how they handle things, even then the situation is happening. Let alone when the leader comes in and they have a hard time holding back and they see this vacuum, if you will, the empty space that is not filled up, that has an answer waiting to happen, and they just jump in because that's what they do. That kind of amplifies the idea that when there's an authority in the room, they will make the decision, and we as a team don't need to, right? So that gets even worse. But even in the situations where that's not the case, the teams also defer to authority.
right.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, but there's more happening than that as well, right? So you talked about um, changing opinions and wanting to please the leader. Whether that's a good interpretation of what they want or not is a different story, right? But
Mhm.
still, they are not as um, they're not changing, or they're changing their opinion or their support because of the perceived alliances that they might see. And one of the challenges with that as well is that when you are changing your support, that support is not genuine. When that support is not genuine or authentic, that commitment to making that happen, that sense of accountability to making that happen, is significantly impacted as well. And this is where really your autonomy starts falling down, right? Start breaking down because
Right.
autonomy is all about, hey, we are as a team, we can make our decisions. And because we can make our decisions, we stand by them. And because we stand by them, we're going to put the best effort in, and we're going to not be carried away by the drama and so forth that is happening around us and the politics that are happening around us. So if you start kind of changing that support, all of that breaks down, and you're back in a situation where you just as well can be in a managed and controlled situation, right? And
Yeah.
the benefits of autonomy completely disappear.
Yeah, that's right. I remember seeing one instance where um, a program manager came into a sprint planning meeting. And as the
Hmm.
team was discussing the planning and trying to put some story points on some of the stories, the manager stood up and said, "Well, that particular story can't be more than a 3." And so automatically anchored the whole entire team around what their expectations of the work was, rather than allowing the team to work it out and discuss it. And I
Yeah.
know they were trying to help the team to become maybe a little more efficient in what they were doing or look for different ways, but just the way it was presented, that you could see the whole team felt forced
Yeah.
to meet the expectation, whether it was realistic or not. So, and that's happened
Yeah.
lots of times.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, Wayne, but I've had conversations with leaders when I observe that kind of behavior. That again is coming from a good place, right? I kind of want to stress that. Where I observed that kind of behavior and I played it back at them. And I kind of showed them what I saw in the team and how I perceived the change. Have you had those conversations with leaders?
Those are difficult conversations to have, but yes, if the leader is open and if a person in a position of leadership really wants to become the best leader they can be, they're
Hmm.
usually open to some feedback. So yes, I've had some conversations with some really great leaders about what they
Yeah.
can do and
And
what
what
kinds of
was their
things have
response? Yeah.
their response. Yeah, usually thankfulness, because
Hmm.
I think most leaders are perhaps unaware of the amount of
Hmm.
influence that they're exerting, and
Hmm.
they don't even realize what's happening. So somebody to reflect that back is appreciated if it's done
Yeah.
right. So you've got to
Yeah.
be positive intent when you're
Yeah.
approaching those people too.
I, gratefulness is definitely was definitely a part of the responses that I got, but it was also a one of unbelief or disbelief, where they said
Mhm.
like, "Well, but that's not what I intended. That's absolutely not what I intended. So how am I supposed now to support the team without exerting any influence that I absolutely do not want to exert?" And they kind of struggle with that, right? So it's not something that is easy to overcome. So let's get into how you can do this differently, so
Right.
that you still support the team and you are not kind of overbearing and taking unintentionally the autonomy away from the team.
Right. So, what kind of suggestions would you have for leaders who really want to be involved but need to be careful about how they involve themselves?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I would start with, and so some of those events and the ones that we talked about are the typical ones that you can find in Scrum, but there's a similar events in other methods, or similar kind of I don't know, feedback loops in other methodologies as well.
Mhm.
And there's always some events that are specifically targeted towards getting feedback from an external audience. Like the sprint review is a typical one from Scrum.
Right.
That is really tailored towards that. We want to show what we've done, how we work to the outside world, or most of what we've done, what we worked on to the outside world, and we want to get some feedback. We want to see if that resonates, if we interpret it correctly, and any ideas on how on what to do better. Right. So that is number one. Stick to those events that already are designed to accept feedback and have external people showing up. That's the first thing that I would do.
Right. And just an extension on that would mean to not attend the events where that feedback is not required. You'll
Um,
right.
I I wouldn't go that far. What I would say is, if you really want to, you can, but I would ask permission. I wouldn't just decide that I will show up. I would ask permission to the team and say like, "Hey, is it all right? I don't intend to come and participate in your planning meeting, but I kind of would like to see where you guys are, and I would kind of like to see how things are going and show my support. Is it all right if I do it this way?" And because and I wouldn't do this every week either, right? I would say like, okay, like once every 2 months, if you have multiple teams, maybe stop by a team once every 2 weeks or so. That might be a valuable way. You still show your support. It's less overbearing. You at the same time see as well, during the times that you're not there, that the decisions that you're making during planning meeting actually hold. Um, they're not reverted once the
Right.
leader hears about them. So there's more confidence that you're building at the same time while you're not there, to have them in the meeting, while to have you in the meeting while you're there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes me think of one other thing that would be really, really great for leaders to do in any occasion is ask the group, how can I help? What is it that they need? And then when they say they need something, make sure it happens for them. you're in a position of
Right.
leadership for that reason, to make things happen for the team. So back them up, give them what they need, give them the support they need, give them the
Yeah.
tools, resources, whatever it is they need, and make sure they have it so they can do their work. And you'll be the best leader that they've ever had.
Yeah, and you're actually reminding me of something entirely different, Wayne. Not entirely different, but it really feeds into it. And maybe this is the last thing that we need to bring up because we're already over 15 minutes.
Yep.
Is if you see in one of those meetings like an empty space where the team is waiting for you to respond, then maybe instead of responding, and I'm guilty of not doing that either, right? I know
Right.
this. I like to jump in, and I need to be very self-aware, and it's not always that easy to do. But if you can, and if you're that self-aware, and you can hold yourself back, and instead of giving the answer, just say, okay, what would you guys do?
Mhm.
What would you do instead of giving the answer? And that would make an awful lot more sense. And again, I realize it's not that easy, even though you have the best intentions.
Right.
Okay.
So wrapping it up, to be a good leader, give feedback when required, don't when not. Ask, what would you do and how can I help?
That's an amazing summary of today's session, Wayne. Thank you so much. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I definitely did. I will remember that summary forever. If you have a situation at work in the past or right now that you feel has an intended bad outcomes, let us know, and we might discuss it in one of our next sessions. Thank you again, Wayne, and see you next time.
Thanks, Gino. See you.